Welcome to the Brickworks podcast, an extension of the studio based here in Burnham-on-sea. Our aim for this podcast is to have a completely open forum for conversation. This could be about art, life, mental health, or even how the world is burning down around us right now. Whether you're listening to this whilst on a run or relaxing at home, we hope you enjoy our mild-mannered rambles. Thank you. Like your own studio.
Well, I mean, like wherever I am, I kind of create my space. Because it's like I did a ski season and I got my dad to send out everything because I was just like, I don't know why I thought I wouldn't do any sort of music. I thought I'm just going to go away, do my season and have fun and everything, which I did. But it was like, I had my moments where I was just like, I just need to create. I want to make my music. And I had my laptop and literally everything's just on my laptop. Like some people work with a monitor, but I don't have the space for that. So I think a lot of my stuff now that I bought is kind of like on the go. So I can always kind of, just pick a place, set it up, and then I'm done and good to go, really. Obviously I can't carry all my instruments around with me. So
I was gonna say that,
I do kind of create a little bit of a corner, but I'm not one of those types of people to always use them. So I kind of pull them out when I need to, put them back. But I've always been that sort of person. I was like that when I was a child with my toys. Like I'd bring them all out, play with the ones I want, then put them all back. And it was like, I'm so tidy.
Yeah, that's very organized. That's probably the most organized creative I've heard in a while. I'm gonna be honest.
I mean, my brain is definitely not organized, but and whilst I'm working, I'm not organized. Like everything, like paperwork everywhere. Like I don't have like it's this and this and this and this. No, it'll literally be like everything everywhere. And it makes sense to me, obviously. If anyone walks in, I'm like, I'm sorry, like, but this is the way that I work. So I'm always like, when you had to share a table at school, like with someone, it was like the worst thing for me because I am such a spreader as well. Like everything just goes at every different angle, and I'm just like looking at the other person sharing, and I'm like, I'm sorry, but I need the space. So can you move your pencil case over?
I could just imagine it now. Like literally one of those huge desks. You remember them at King Alfred's where they were massive and it's like just spreading.
The ones in science weren't too bad as well though, because it was like a bench as well, so you could kind of spread out a bit more.
Also, they were great for carving your name into. Or using a Bunsen burner, just like.
I wonder if they still got them though.
I don't know. I was in King Alfred's just before back in February when I did an exhibition there. I never went into the science rooms.
Yeah.
But they've changed like a load of it.
I kind of drive past sometimes, and I think because obviously you can drive kind of through, and I always have like a little look. I'll take a little detour. Let's have a look. Oh, okay, that's nice. That's new.
Yeah.
And then other times I'm just like, I want to see what the classroom's like, but it's never going to be the same. Like it's like your curiosity's there, but it's just going to kill your memories that you had.
Yeah, it's like the curiosity kills the cat, I suppose, isn't it? It's the same thing. It's like when I last went in there, it was like this weird feeling of being back in my old school. There's so many memories,
literally,
and stuff like that come from school, whether they're good or bad, whatever. But yeah, it's quite strange. And that's interesting you say about like being like a spreader, which is interesting terminology. Because like I found so many creatives are like that. Do you think it's like the moment? Because I find sometimes when I'm in the creative process, I'm not thinking about my environment as such. I'm thinking about what I'm doing, what I'm focused on.
I think so. I think it comes with being a creative person. I don't think I've met anyone that's creative and really structured and rigid almost. If anything, that's all I get with like, I like structure, but I find it's too rigid. And as a creative, I definitely think like it's not natural. It's not the most natural environment for that. And I think, what it's like when you have an idea, it comes at the most random point, and sometimes it's not at a point where you can do anything about it. Like I have it when I'm at work, and I'm just like, like, why do I have to be right here, right now? Why can't you wait until like 3 hours once I finish, and then I'm home and I can do something? So it's like that. But then also is when you're actually working on something that you're in the moment of, it's like zing, 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 zing. So many things are like happening in your mind, and it's like, I need to do this and this and this and this, and you kind of like write it down at least to an extent of so that, you know, when you come back to it, you're like, oh yeah, okay, you know, I still need to do this, and I've got this idea. Oh, maybe I can change this a bit more and stuff like that. Like, I always get that. So I think if you're organized, you're just going to lose that sort of spontaneousness that comes with creativity.
Yeah, I think there's definitely to be said in the spontaneity of being creative. Like, for me personally, I'm quite structured.
Yeah.
If anyone sort of looks at like my social media, I'm very like rigid with the way I live my life in some ways. But then, yeah, other ways it can become this complete mishmash of like ideas and just emotions. I think work
massively.
comes a lot from, yeah. I think most of us though have emotion. Well, we had a really interesting conversation. This is on the previous podcast with Samuel Fradley, who runs the Southwest Collective.
Yeah.
Great photographer, good guy. And we were talking about how, as a photographer or just as an artist in general, that you become emotionally attached to the work you create, and it creates this really interesting paradox when you start exhibiting your artwork or showing your work, because you're showing a part of your soul almost.
And that's why we take it so personally when there's no likes or when it's not having the reaction that we want.
No, massively. I agree. I think that's the thing, is like social media, like, before we barrel off down that street, I think it's one of those, like, you get so emotionally attached to your work. And I'm guessing with you know, your music and you're singing, like, I've listened to most of your music as well, and it's quite emotionally heavily intensive. Yeah. And
I mean, if you talk about like certain songs with me, like, I can literally, I know exactly who it's about, like why I wrote it, how I was feeling, and sometimes even like it could be that emotional that I'm like holding back the tears. I'm like, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. Or then other times where I'm like, because I don't just write sad songs, but like there are other songs where I'm like, it's a really, really good memory, and even when I sing it, like it's almost like having a picture reel in my head of like I can see where I was and where I was standing, what time, how old I was, and everything. Like it just comes back, every detail possible.
Yeah.
And that's cool, but like what we're talking about with putting it out to people, it's then so hard, because it's like when you read books, and you always used to get it when you were being taught English. It's like sometimes the way that you write stuff isn't going to be the way that some reader actually reads it. Like they'll read it in a completely different way, and that could be relevant to their background experiences and everything like that. So then it's the same with songs. It's like you can tell a story, but someone else can get a completely different story to what you're actually talking about.
Yeah.
And it's really cool, to be fair. I really find it interesting when someone gives me like another perspective of how they saw something.
Yeah, of course.
But then at the same time, it's also like, if someone doesn't get it, and you know, you want people to enjoy it as much as you have, because that's why you finally got to that point to release it.
Yeah, and
like it's so hard to release sometimes. Like I mean, you look at my music or whatever, I don't release that many songs. I haven't for a while. And it's just because it's not just being a perfectionist. It's also being like emotionally ready to be like, right, is it okay? Am I ready to release this? No.
Yeah, no, I can imagine, because like, I suppose that singing is even more intimate with regards to like showing yourself, because it's, you know, it's your voice. It's, you know, the way people interact with you. One of the key components compared to, you know, potentially imagery or painting, which is much more about the emotional brushstroke of what you're seeing in your mind and in the world. So no, it's interesting to hear with regards to you not necessarily releasing that many songs, and how it has like quite a correlation to how you're feeling about yourself.
Yeah, massively. I mean, like, I had a bit of a crisis year, so like that was just, I was writing so much, and I've literally got thousands of songs saved on my hard drive. But sometimes it's songs that I kind of wrote just for myself. Like, obviously music at the same time as therapy. There's a reason why there's music therapy about and why it works. And for me, it's like, because I'm also creative, I can write down everything that I feel. I can do it in a way that makes me feel like I'm actually releasing the stress as well from it. And then it means that I can feel so much better. But it's not necessarily going to be a song that anyone else listens to. Like there's some songs that, wow, like I think anyone would just be like, well, are you okay? And I'm fine. But it was just like, in the moment, that's me, and I'll keep it kind of there. Like I'm kind of open, but then also slightly private with certain things. And especially with songwriting, like it makes you vulnerable when you're writing stuff, because obviously you are writing from personal experiences, unless you're like a pop artist, which is a bit different. But the style of writing I write in is more like very much story, very much like kind of a bit like poetry with the flow, and also like giving it a load of metaphors, which then allows people to then see my songs as how they want in their life. But it's also like I know my meaning behind it, and it's deep for me. Like, you know, that's why I struggle sometimes releasing, but it's also because like when I'm singing, I'm so picky with my voice, and if it doesn't sound the way I want it to sound, then you know, it's just like redo again, redo again, redo again. And I don't get bored of it, but it's more of like, I mean, I struggle with the time at the same time. And that's like a big factor as well of why I don't get to release so much. But then at the same time, like I want to be able to release something that's semi-perfect. Like it's perfect in my mind, but it's obviously not going to be perfect. But it's at a level that I'm like, this is acceptable.
I'm okay with letting the world see this. Of course. Yeah, no, interesting, because like I've spoke to a few musicians that are like that as well, with regards to trying to aim for perfection in something that is naturally not something that can be perfect, you know. I think the human voice, you know, if we're gonna go down God,
like I put one of those perfect pitch sort of effects on my voice the other day just to see what it was like, and it was so weird. Like it didn't sound like my voice in certain areas, and then other times I was just like, okay, it sounds nice because it's meant to be the right note, but it's lost its natural emotion,
almost character by the sounds.
I mean, I think this is why some people find like pop music not so great, because it is so many effects on those voices, and you do kind of lose a lot of the emotion. But obviously pop music isn't really meant to be for that. Like I know a lot of people are like, oh, pop music's rubbish, but it has its role in the musical genres sort of thing, and it's the reason why it's all successful, is because people don't listen often to sad songs, for instance. Pop songs are never usually a sad song. Maybe you get out of the blue. You can kind of get
lost in them as well. I found, like, I'm obviously personally I don't listen to a lot of pop music. I probably do without realizing, if that makes sense.
You'd be surprised.
With regards to like Spotify, I don't listen to the radio anymore. I think that shows.
No, I don't.
No, I can't remember the last time I actually turned the radio on to listen to it.
I can't keep up with it, to be honest. Like people always like, oh, you know, have you heard this new song? And I'm like, honestly, there's a new song like every 2 minutes. So
sort of every day. Well, I wonder how many songs get uploaded to Spotify on a daily basis.
Probably an insane amount. I mean, it's actually quite easy to get stuff on Spotify. I've obviously got my stuff up on there, and you just have to go through a distributor. That's the only thing. You can't personally upload it, and if anything, that's a good thing, because this can sound so mean now, but just there's some people that maybe need like a little bit more work, and you know, you find the YouTube videos of whatever, like someone, you know, really trying, really loving it, but it just they've got some things they need to kind of work on. So it's like I feel like Spotify, Apple, everything else, like all the streaming platforms, means that you're a little bit more like professional, a bit more established. It's not just kind of a whim that you're gonna try out and see if it goes. I don't know. There's one video now I can think of very specifically, and it was like, I can't remember the name of it, but it was something that must have been made on like Windows Movie Maker.
Okay.
And I remember it being like a huge thing that everyone used to take the mick out of.
Was it like a song?
It was like a guy, a boy, like I don't know, and he had some sort of vocoder thing effect on his voice. I think you know what I'm on about now.
Yeah, I can see it.
But it's like that, you know, everyone was sharing it, but it wasn't for the right reasons, you know? And I think that's the good thing about why not everyone can just upload, and you know, you're serious enough to find out how to upload it, then obviously to
go through a distributor and try and, you know, go down the professional process, I suppose, rather than how does SoundCloud, is that the same? Or
SoundCloud's still SoundCloud's still good. I think it's definitely for it's more if you want to find stuff that's not exactly, I'm going to sound so lame, but like when people say mainstream, it is like
it's a bit alternative.
It's more creative, I think, sometimes,
Yeah.
but it's kind of a bit like when you find the creative snobs as well. I think it's a bit like I feel like I'm meant to be in sort of some sort of sly, quiet little club that but we use like an EXP blah 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 keyboard or something like that, and I'm just like, okay, right, you do you. Whereas like Spotify is the more general, like, oh hello everyone, like
it's become very commercialized, like,
massively. Yeah.
I don't know if you yourself was on Spotify when it first came around, but it was a bit more niche in a way.
Yeah, I felt like it was a bit more cool. Like it's like the whole SoundCloud niche, but obviously it's too mainstream now. it's like that
ads
whole
running
sort of
and
thing. I mean, the thing is, you only have the ads on the free one. Obviously, I have the premium one because I hate adverts so much.
I can attest to this so much.
I can't do it. Like we are advertised all the time. I just want one little space where it's not advertisable. Like it's the one thing that upsets with me with YouTube. It's just so many adverts all the time, and especially the ones that you can't click to skip just irritates me so much.
Have you ever had the ones that the ad is longer than the video you're about to watch, and you can't skip it for like 30 seconds or a minute?
I'm criticizing the adverts, but I have actually found a couple of people that I listen to via YouTube adverts, because sometimes you get the ones where I think it's Apple sometimes will do like a music video advert, and I remember Loyal Kana was one of the adverts I saw, and I think it was because it was on an Apple advert for a project. It wasn't even his like music video, and I remember shazamming the song like, oh my god, this is great, and it was just because it was from an advert. So sometimes
capitalism works.
It's great, but then other times I hate it.
Honestly, I think that's the thing though, isn't it, with like YouTube especially, is it's like not even our generation and the generation sort of after us as well. I don't watch TV. I don't watch TV.
YouTube is my TV, to be honest.
100%. I can't remember the last time I actually personally turned on a TV to sit down and watch it. I'm always either on YouTube or Netflix or Amazon Prime, streaming services.
I don't use Netflix that much. I'm not really much of a TV person. Like I very rarely watch something unless it's something that's been recommended by people that I follow, and I'll make the exception. And I don't know. I mean, I did a YouTube video on a show that's currently like really popular.
Is it Emily in Paris?
Emily in Paris, yeah. And I only was like, because you hear from the title Emily in Paris, and I was like, well, French culture for me as well. Like I'm interested to see what it's like, because obviously it's going to be in English, which is interesting take, to be honest, because it's obviously taking the French culture, and I was really upset by it, basically. Yeah. To say the long story short. And I only watched it literally because I thought like it might actually be interesting. But a lot of the times, even if there is a hype on a show, like I don't really bend towards it. And it's not just me trying to look like I'm cool and a snob and everything like that, but it is just my time is very like particular to me. Like I'm so protective over it. So if I'm going to spend it watching something, like it needs to be something that I'm going to get something out of.
Yeah. And something that you're going to invest that time that is quite...
massively. I mean, don't get me wrong. I have watched Gossip Girl and I did enjoy it. But like that was my switch off time. And that's what I thought Emily in Paris was going to be. But it just ended up annoying me.
Yeah, it just ended up infuriating you. And then you ended up doing more work.
Yeah, exactly. So I was just like, not for me.
No, you just recently rebooted your YouTube, didn't you? And started uploading again. Because I remember... Because a little bit of a backstory to anyone that's listening or watching, me and Rhiane used to spend a lot of time at the skate park. If anyone, shout out Apex, the Apex crew. 2013 was the year. But we haven't really met each other since then, I don't think. So this is like a reconnection podcast at the same time. It's quite interesting. But anyway, back then you were really interested in sort of filmmaking and photography. Because we were quite interested in the same things at that same time.
Definitely, yeah. I remember like always bringing my camera down as well. I've literally got 500 photos from the skate park days. And it was always, I'd take the camera down and I'd probably come home with 300 photos every time. I've finally like obviously whittled them down to actually looking, right, that is a really blurry one. I do not need to keep it because my poor hard drive is like getting slated with all this memory it needs to store. But yeah, like we always used to, I remember you were like doing a lot of photography as well with all the BMX lot.
Yeah, I got into it serious, like properly got into it real deep and started getting, you know, especially when I was like 15, 16, like it was my world, you know, like being wanting to be an action sports photographer at the time, you know. And I remember I got published in Ride BMX when I was like 16 years old, and I was like, I thought I'd made it. I was like, holy shit, I've made it. Yeah, I was like, boys, I fucking made it. But no, it was interesting to see because there was so many other people that were bringing different forms of creativity to the skate park and that culture, you know. If anyone's ever been in that culture, like the skate park,
it's so good. I think I don't know why it ends up getting such a bad rep, to be honest. Like so many people from the outside always look at it as like, oh, you're from the skate park, and it's a bit dodgy. And I'm like, no, it's not. Like massively not. Like I would probably say those times were probably the best times of my life.
I agree.
Like I mean, I don't speak to the majority of the people from there, but they are the ones that kind of taught me so many things, like life skills, you know?
Yeah, totally.
From that time, like especially when you actually do it. Like remember when I was like trying to skate as well, like most of the girls would go down there, and that was obviously when girls didn't skate.
No.
Like it was not a thing. Like
it wasn't really heard of back.
Not really.
Not even that long ago.
And it was just like, especially from being a girl as well, like being taught by boys is like, it was nice because it just, when you're in a skate park, like there's no like, gender's not even a thing. There's no, oh yeah, but you're from a different like class or whatever. It's just like everyone's together and everyone's friends, like regardless, even age wise, other than scooters. But let's not talk about scooters.
I've still got deep hatred towards scooters.
I see them in the, like when I'm just walking along the street and I hear the scooters, I'm like,
it's like noise. I'm like.
But do you ever find as well though, when you think you hear a skateboarder and you look out the window and it's a suitcase?
Yeah,
because
you immediately jump. Do you find as well walking around the street you see spots that you want to ride or skate? I found that when I moved to Cheltenham. I hadn't really rode BMX in years. Like
it's
really
still
taken
in you, isn't it?
100%. Everywhere I go, I'm like, oh, that's a nice 3-step there. Run up's a bit sketchy, but
I always get so annoyed as well. Like when you see the articles of, I know, councils like doing something to stop skateboarders, and I'm like, oh, why have you got to bring the fun? Like,
100%. And I think that's the thing, is that I think that culture has got a lot more appreciation now. I think there is a level of understanding towards, you know, the alternative culture, which is skateboard and BMX now.
I think they made it fashionable though as well. Like I remember there's a skateboarder, Ben Norberg, and I know he does a few things for like Burberry, I think. And I remember they did an advert and he was skating in it. So I think it's definitely caught like the eye, and especially now as well, wherever you have like your popular culture in terms of music, like most of that is your rappers and trap artists, and they are very much part of the skate culture.
Yeah, most definitely.
Like there's, I mean, you take Gabs for instance. I mean, he's in that sort of genre, and he was based in a skate park a lot of the time. Like he was with us a lot.
100%.
And everything that we used to listen to was mostly hip hop and rap, and
I think
maybe the tiny bit of like trap when it was kind of emerging.
When it was little what was it, Little John, wasn't it, and all of that sort of stuff. No, I think that's the thing though, is like, I don't know if you'd agree, but I feel like I learned so much about not just myself when I was that age and developing in like an environment of, there wasn't really a gender as such, and we didn't see age and all those things, but there was still, especially being a young man, there was still the banter, you know, without quotations. And I think you learn different aspects of like ways of growing up in a way.
Definitely,
I think, you know, from that culture, and let's go down that route because I'm not a parent. I don't think. You know, I wouldn't want to see my kid now just playing Fortnite and not getting out of the house. And I remember, I know yourself was the same, spending days and days at
Literally
the
until it
skate
went
park.
dark.
Yeah, literally get there at like 10, 11 in the morning, afternoon time, and be there all the way through till like 9, 10 o'clock at night, and then go off into town, and like you're just in that culture,
Get the
immersed
chips,
in it.
go to the seafront.
100%. This is literally like reliving it. But that's the thing, is like, it actually does concern me a little bit now that kids aren't necessarily getting that upbringing potentially.
I think, yeah. I mean, like, I definitely have some strong views on parenting nowadays. I don't think a lot of people might agree, but I do think. Do I say this out loud? No, I'm gonna say it out loud. I feel like a lot of parents don't act like parents.
Interesting.
I think, like, I remember having an upbringing where, like, I knew my place. I wasn't disrespectful to teachers or like anyone else, like, unless they were rude to me in the first place. Then you get what you're given, sort of thing, with my attitude. But it's like, you knew what you had to behave with, and when it was acceptable and when it wasn't, and stuff like that. And I feel like, I'm gonna say that, it's maybe sometimes more difficult nowadays because there is so much stimulation, but then also, like, working longer. You can't always, like, go home and be with your kids and stuff like that. But I feel like if you don't have that connection between parents and kids, like, that's probably why they're gonna go off and do something else, and then maybe go out and cause havoc. Because I notice nowadays, and I sound so old when I say it, but it is like, you look at the kids nowadays and they're like, oh my god, like, they're little rat bags. 100%. Like, a lot of them, they're all walking around and they're like, I don't know, they're wearing clothes more expensive than the stuff that I've got for a start.
I was about to say, I literally have seen people walk it, but sorry, no, we'll come back. I just wanted to quickly say, I remember first thing I saw when I lived in Cheltenham, right? So Cheltenham's, I don't know if you've ever been,
it's really nice.
It's lovely, very wealthy in places, extremely wealthy. And I remember seeing, he must have been no older than 15, 16 years old, wearing a full Gucci tracksuit, a Balenciaga shoe. Like, I'm not even kidding, this kid must have probably had the better part of like $5,000 worth of clothes on him.
It makes you cry a little bit.
It does, because I looked at him, I was like, when I was that age, I didn't even have £1 to go to the shop.
No,
you know what I mean?
Like, I was only given, like, I don't know, 50p for doing, I don't know, making my bed or something like that. For
sure. It
and weird. It was like, sweeties, you go down to the pound shop, you 100%. Get like the ones that the 1-piece sweets. And fill up your bag and everything. Like,
God, I just realised.
They're not around anymore.
I just realised how fucking old we're sounding.
I know.
Like, what is going on right now?
But at the same time, it makes me then also see how fast things are changing. Like, you hear about your parents saying, oh, I remember back in my day, blah, blah, blah. And they also talk about how fast it goes. But I think as well, with the whole, we're between a generation in a way where we've grown up just before phones were really much of a thing.
And the internet.
And then also when it really excelled.
And
I think we're probably like the last lot that were able to kind of enjoy the best of both. Obviously, we didn't have phones like they do nowadays where you can have screens and access the internet. Like, I remember back in the day when you had like the flip phones, and then eventually they had internet on the phone, and it was a big thing. But at the same time, you knew that when you go onto the internet, it was so rubbish. Like, it would take 10 minutes to load on your phone, and you're thinking, I can't really do anything else on it.
No.
And so you just never used it. So obviously we didn't have anything to like I see some parents like passing the iPad to the kid when he's crying, and I'm like, no, don't do that.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? I think that's the thing. It's like, obviously I'm not a parent, so I don't know firsthand as such, but I think it's definitely interesting to see the difference in as you were saying, like, I've seen that multiple times where a kid's crying, they give them an iPad, or they give them something electrical,
something to watch.
And it's like,
I hear it like with parents, like, oh, do you want to play on my phone?
It's an interesting, so like,
I think it's a hard one, I think. It is, because I feel like I'm being so critical of parents, but at the same time, like, I get it. Like, it's hard. You just want a scream. Like, I get it even when I'm stood in work and I've got a child that's crying because their mum's busy packing or whatever. And I don't even want to listen to it, let alone the mum, I'm sure, doesn't want to listen to that. So it is like, if you can shut them up really quickly, like, it's a no-brainer. And you're stressed, you've got work, you've got this, you've got that. And it's hard nowadays, especially with like whole coronavirus and stuff. And yeah, but at the same time, like, I think there needs to be that level of effort still going in. Like, yes, definitely. It's hard, but it's totally worth it if you do it a little bit better.
I'm sure it's a very rewarding experience in some ways. It's interesting though, because before we started podcasting, we got into such a deep conversation about like Apple and capitalism and businesses and all these things, and it's like, and also sort of overworking and the culture of it. And we were talking about how sort of in Scandinavia, they obviously work less hours during the week, but then I think statistically more productive,
more happier.
Very much so. And it's really interesting because I think it's starting to show with the pandemic and coronavirus, I think there's a lot of positive that's come out of this situation.
Massively, yeah.
Huge amounts of positive for personal, reasons, and people's personal lives and their work lives, working from home, being around their children, etc. But I think there's also a lot that we need to learn from this whole thing as well.
I think a lot of us have been on autopilot for a long time. I think that's what it is. And I think with this whole pandemic, especially for the ones that were furloughed, so they couldn't even work, it was almost like, well, what am I going to do with all this time? And personally, I was jealous because I had to work through it anyway. So I was like, give me the time that you've got. But, I was watching some people and they were really struggling. And it's because you're then going back to like really, really basic needs of like, okay, if I didn't have to spend all my time doing this, what would I rather doing? And it's like, I think some people realize they don't have any hobbies. Like work is their life and that's about it as far as it goes. And I think then it brings you back to the person maybe that you were once before, or maybe that you've yet to discover.
Or who you want to be but haven't had the chance to explore it as such. Yeah, totally. And I think it's really interesting to see a lot of people get very creative during lockdown, and
especially ones that I didn't expect to be creative.
Totally. I've seen, with the Brickworks collective, shameless plug, I've noticed like the level of creativity across all different age demographics and all different backgrounds is incredible. People that are, making like pottery and making like cups and plates and beautiful pieces. And then on the flip side, you have street artists that have just discovered that they're actually really good at oil painting. You know what I mean? It's incredible to see that.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think out of all the people I know, you're the only person I know that actually traveled during this pandemic. So you've been traveling a little bit.
Well, yeah, kind of. I mean, obviously I've been respectful of the rules and stuff.
Of course.
So I didn't go around during like the lockdowns and stuff. I literally home, work, home sort of thing. But then once the restrictions were lifted, me and my boyfriend, we'd always like kind of pick somewhere on the map and just go, because a lot of the times, like, I mean, this was also before we really knew the certainty with like summer and the holidays and whether cancellations were going to be like too frequent, that we didn't want to end up losing money. But we'd kind of discovered a lot of home, essentially, for me anyway. Like, my boyfriend's Italian, so it's a bit different for him. Like, he's just discovering new places. I'm discovering something that's actually meant to be a part of me. Like, this is my heritage. This is the location of, like, for instance, just places where I've grown up near, but I've not necessarily seen it, and I almost feel embarrassed that I've not seen it even after all this time. And to see like more of my country, I'm like, oh, okay, this is actually quite cool. And then you read like a lot of the places you go to, there's always like the little, I don't know what they're actually called, like, the historical circles on the buildings, and there's always something that's written about someone that was
like
born
the blue
there.
Circles. I think they're like the crowns or something.
But they're always like super interesting when I'm like going up to everyone like, what's this one saying? Like, who was here? I have no idea who the person was. Half of the time, like, I'm looking like, cool. But it's just like, wow, okay, this is actually really, really interesting because we always go away somewhere else and discover. I mean, like personally, I like those types of holidays. I go to places. I always want to see the history. I go to the museums. Like I did that with Cyprus last year or year before. Like I went to Nicosia, which is the only divided city in the world. Still held with the Green Line between the Turkish side and the Greek side by the UN. So it's called the Green Mile, something like that. Literally, like there is a border in the middle of the city, and it's weird because obviously you need your passport to then go to the other side.
Interesting.
I forgot my passport that day, and I was already an hour away from where I was staying, so I was just like, well, I'll discover more of the Greek side. And like going to all these museums, and then with this whole pandemic, the fact that we couldn't go elsewhere, I was just like, well, what am I gonna do now? But there's so many places in the UK that it's just not how you expect it to be. Like, especially, I don't know, little towns that end up being really, really pretty and interesting, and you're just like, why didn't I know about this before?
Yeah, why have I never Google mapped this or even thought about going
like
this
all
way?
the time that I've had, and I've not even seen it, and it was literally this many miles down the road.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is, going back to what we were saying, you just get so caught up in the rat race. You know?
Yeah,
you don't. I think a good friend of mine who lives in London, we were talking about the rat race last night. I think it was, or the night before, or whatever, on FaceTime. And you immediately, when you say that, you think of capital cities or places where it's full of people.
London, Birmingham, Manchester. You go to places that are listed on a map.
Yeah.
Like 100%. A really zoomed out map as well,
100%. But that's what I mean, is like the ideology of like people in the rat race, like needing to do more and more and more. You kind of associate that with busy places. But I think the idea of like the rat race, I know I keep saying that, but the feeling of constantly having to keep working and hustling, etc. I think it's a mindset. It's not, you can't necessarily associate it with a place as such. And I think
no, 100%.
The lockdown and the pandemic, and for me, I had surgery this year, and all of these things made me realize how much I'm neglecting actually just exploring and letting my mind be my mind.
Yeah, I mean, like one thing as well for me, and I'm sure so many other people feel like that, but I didn't realize how much of a sort of travel bug in me I had until there was the restrictions, and I was like, no, let me go. Like, I feel like I'm being chained with a ball and everything. Like, it's a horrible, horrible feeling. And I think it does then also make you appreciate more of like the freedom that we had before. And not to touch too much on it, but with the whole Brexit thing, like it's one of those things that's very, very uncertain with traveling. Like, we don't really know what's going to happen. Do we need visas? Do we need this? So much paperwork. Is it going to end up being more expensive to go do something like, I mean, I really wanted to do one of those what are they called, the Euro travel, you know, when you go on like a train and you go to different countries. That thing, I can't remember what it's called now.
That would be interesting.
I really wanted to do that, and then obviously we've left now, and I'm like, well, what do I do now?
Yeah, that's and especially this year being the year that we're meant to be making a deal and all of these things, and not to go down.
It's uncertain, and I think that's what makes me feel nervous. I mean, I'd really like it to work out. Like, I mean, I voted Remain, whatever. That's my views and everything. But
of course,
now I'm like, can it please just work out? Because I got things to do, you know. I got places to see, and I've only got, you know, the whole one life, short life, and everything like
honestly,
that.
I think that's the thing, is you forget. Like, I had a moment this morning actually whilst on my run. I was like, "Fuck me, I'm 25. Like, I'm
25 next year, and I'm just like, where's it gone?"
Yeah, 100%. And by no means is that any age. I know there might be people watching this at like 40.
As well. Like, people say to me, "Oh yeah, but you're so young," and I'm like, "Yeah, I know, but I feel like I'm not."
Yeah, because it just goes so quickly. It's like a second ago we were talking about, you know, being at the skate park. We were like 13, 14, 15 years old. Right? That's 10 years. Like, that's 10 years ago for me. Like, it's mad. And yeah, I just had that moment of like realization as I was about to pass out running. Being like, holy shit, I need to get on with what I want to get on with. Like,
I think that's the negative side though as well of the whole hustle culture, because you constantly feel like you don't have enough time to do everything, and that because everyone else is doing a lot of things, you need to do a lot of things as well because you want to get ahead. But goes into it almost blends into the rat race as well. And it's really hard to kind of pull back and be like, wait, hang on a minute, I'm doing things now that aren't actually me, I don't enjoy, and I'm only doing it to make it look like I'm doing really well. And I think this is another thing of like trying to realize like what is you and what is you just being sucked into the culture and going ahead, like because it feels great at the moment. But once you have your crash, you're like, wow, okay, reevaluate, because this is not right.
Yeah, totally. It's interesting how we're talking about crashes like we did earlier. But yeah, no,
I think that's part of being a creative person as well.
Honestly, I do. I think the same as writer's block, we have creative block in the same context, and also creative crashes,
Yeah.
I found starting the studio a huge like moment for me in my career, especially, but also this massive load of stress and overwhelming pressure that, okay, maybe I'm putting on myself. Well, no, I am putting on myself. Just like straight into my head, immediately crashed. And I'm only starting to feel a little bit better now. But it's interesting because I've recently taken up meditating again. And yes.
There we go.
And by no means do I feel like I'm fully effective in it yet, but it's the practice of it that I'm finding. I like repetition.
Yeah.
That's, I like discipline and repetition personally. That's why I run 3-4 times a week, blah, blah, blah. So having the repetition of meditating every night now and the practice of it is actually calming me down more than the process of meditating.
Yeah, definitely. They always say on these apps and stuff like that, like once you start developing a habit of it, then you'll start to really reap the benefits. I mean, like, to be honest, I don't meditate like every single day, but I've been doing it for like 2 years now, and it was one of those things for me. It was like a turning point. Like it's massively made an impact on the way that I react to things. Like I still get emotional. It's not gonna ever change that. Like I'm quite an emotional person anyway, but it does give me more times now where I'm pausing before I initially react. Like especially for moments that correlate more to anger and stuff. Like when I'm presented with a scenario or experience that I'm gonna get angry at, and I know I normally would have in the past, but now I don't react in that same way. And it's much nicer because it means that you're not having to pick up the pieces afterwards because you're thinking, I shouldn't have said that. I was terrible. I used to say things on whatever was on the tip of my tongue.
Were you quite reactionary, sort of?
Very much. Like I don't know if you're into the whole astrology thing much. I'm not into reading my horoscope every day, but I do believe in like the traits.
Of course.
I'm very much an Aries. Like I'm fiery, I'm hot-headed.
Yeah.
And meditation has helped me kind of pull it back a little bit.
Almost calm it.
It got me to a point where like I was losing people that I loved a lot. And I was just like, I can't keep being like this. Like, even if I say, but it's my personality, it's like, yes, but we can make it better. And I think that's, for me, meditation really helped me notice that more. And I don't know, like I listen to the guided ones. You probably listen to.
Yeah, I've been using Headspace a lot recently, which is quite a good one, I found.
I like the little quotes that you get, or that, like, not necessarily quotes, but the little highlights at the end once you've done the session. I mean, I use another one called Balance, and I just find the voices a lot more calmer on there for me. Like it kind of resonates a bit more in my head, and it's just one of those things that when I'm doing it, like, it's also the moment where it reminds you to breathe. And it sounds stupid because you're thinking, well, you don't need to think about it, but sometimes I do. Like I don't. It for me, it's also like breath control. Like I forget to breathe sometimes properly, and I'm just like, what am I doing? Like this is why I feel rubbish all the time. But it's just one of those things that, like, meditation is just great. I just recommend everyone to just start doing. Like, it's not what people think of, like some hippie sitting in some yoga position. Like it's never any of that. And I think when more people do it, like, it could just make everyone's experiences so much nicer because you're giving yourself that time to look after yourself, but also it creates your emotions, like, to actually pause and giving yourself time to react to things, which could
Yeah.
then, like I said, it stops you from having to pick up the pieces afterwards.
Yeah, most definitely. And that's so interesting to hear that it's like helped you sort of somewhat slow down those reactions, because I'm finding it's helping me calm down my thoughts. Because I feel like, for me, going back to what we were saying, like when I'm in the creative process, it's almost overwhelming sometimes, like the just the
No, I get
reactions that
that,
are
yeah.
going on in my head. And I found that recently, the last sort of couple of months, the overwhelming reactions in my head are no longer just from creativity, they're from life, like
Yeah.
the pressure of the studio and all of these other things causing my brain just about like, it feels like I'm running 1,000 miles an hour all the time.
Yeah.
Causing a crash.
Yeah.
And I found that I've only started like in the last week meditating, but I'm finding that especially in the evenings, I'm much more capable of switching off or slowing down.
I was going to say,
at least.
evenings is actually quite a prime time. I normally do it just before bed as well, because I always find that my mind is just like, I don't want to sleep. I want to make, this and this and this and this and this. But I mean, I have to get up so early in the morning for work a lot of the times. I do a lot of early shifts. So I have to go to bed.
Of course.
Otherwise, I'm not going to function properly.
No.
So meditating always helps me to like just calm down, and then also like to stop thinking about even memories as well. Like I'll get a horrible memory that happened like maybe, I don't know, 12 years ago, and I'm like, no, why do I have to relive this one again? Can we not? And then meditating just kind of like puts a pause on that. It's like, not right now. Bed.
Sleep.
It's like, off you go. And I definitely find that's really beneficial. I don't know if, do you do it just before bed, or do you give yourself like an hour before bed?
I normally so before we were podcasting, we had quite a conversation about routines, didn't we? And how yourself isn't necessarily a fan of routines, whereas I'm a complete routine-y. Routine-y? Let's work with routine-y. And so, for example, I have a morning routine, I have an evening routine.
Of course you do.
Of course. So for me, I try and stretch for at least sort of half an hour before I actually go to bed, just before I go to bed. So with regards to meditating, it's normally sort of I get home from the studio, have some food, and then I feel myself already starting to slow down a little bit. So that's when I start to like meditate. And I do 20 minutes, half an hour sometimes, if I'm really trying to slow everything down.
Yeah.
I've found, for me, I'm far too competitive though. This is my problem.
Oh no, you don't look at the daily streaks as well.
So I end up looking at the daily streaks.
It's such a bad thing, to be honest. I hate it, because I had it the other week. I actually managed to keep up to 21 days, which for me does not happen. I'm usually like, maybe get up to 3 days, peak off, maybe start again. And it's always like that with me. That's why I can't do routines. I'm terrible at sticking to things. And I found that the only reason why I got up to that point was because I was literally just doing it for the sake of it.
Yeah. See, I don't think I'm doing it for the sake of it yet. This is why I'm talking to yourself. Give me some advice, Rhiane. But I find that if I don't feel like I had a good session, it kind of pisses me off a little bit.
No, I get that.
Because I've given...
I think that's what meditation is, though. Like, it's never the same every time. Like, there's moments where I do it and I realize, like, I've sat through a 20-minute session and I've not once felt like I've connected to that point I was meant to get to. And I'll know that I'll be listening to it and it's saying, like, don't let the thoughts go, and I'm like, no, because they're going everywhere. Like, I can't keep hold of them. It's like having 20 kids and trying to keep them all in one place. It's like that with my head, and I'm just, you get to the end of the session and like, maybe I should do another one because that didn't work.
Honestly, I've done that a couple of times.
Yeah.
That's probably why I'm doing like 30 minutes. Because I do like one session that's like 15.
Yeah.
That was terrible. Let's go again. But that's the thing is, I think, for myself, I touched upon it in the previous podcast with Gabrielle, but my problem is, we spoke about like unlocking part of the brain. So I'm a big believer in that the mind can be tuned and changed and reoriented to how you want it to be if you're willing to open up and make those changes,
Yeah.
the hard changes as well, you know.
Yeah.
And I found for me, when I had a really bad bout with depression and suicide and all these things, I unlocked this capability in my mind, almost this I'm not going to quit now
Yeah, no,
sort of
I
thing.
totally get that, because I was in the same boat.
Yeah, it's really,
It's a really, really, it's weird. It's one of those things that I'm kind of glad I've gone through that, because it really woke something up. And it's almost a bit like how you're saying it unlocked part of your brain. If anything, if I hadn't have had that crisis, I wouldn't have changed myself to the way that I am now. And you'd think that I'm saying, yeah, but you've changed yourself. But it's actually the stuff that I should have changed way before. It was all the bad habits, the bad traits, the bad behaviors and stuff that I just kept ignoring. And I thought, well, it's fine because this is who I am.
Yeah,
but it wasn't really who I should be. I think that's the biggest thing.
It's not who you could be.
No.
I think is the question that I ask myself. And it's interesting to hear that as well, because from your demeanor and our conversations, although they've been brief until now, I never got the sense of you going through like some large enlightenment or big change. I'd always sort of got a feeling from yourself that you're pretty steady. You kind of had your finger on the pulse.
I know. Really, I've always given off that, because I always remember like people would always say to me at school, like, oh, you seem like really chill and laid back. And like, I was always that kid that was friends with everyone, but never had like a certain group that I was like only attached to. Like, I not necessarily bounce from friendships. It's just that I was just more open. Like, I didn't really have like strong opinions or whatever. And I think obviously it's also finding that sort of space of where you are. Yeah. But most of it, I think I've always given off this neutralness as well. Neutralness. I don't even know if that's a word, but I'll make it a word anyway.
It works.
And I don't know. I think I was learning a lot of the times as well, like how to deal with emotions. I don't think I dealt with a lot of them the right way. And I think that's just part of like when you're growing up. I know, well, until I had counseling, that was when I realized like the way that I wasn't exactly like the right way. It was stuff that I really needed to look at. And it was also like so many reasons that I hadn't even realized were actually affecting me. And I think it was almost, I remember what she said to me. She said to me that you've told me everything that's happened in your life with so much just like detachment.
Yeah. Sort of distance.
Yeah.
In a way. Yeah.
And I've realized like maybe that's kind of how I portrayed myself a lot of the time, because I was always so detached from like stuff that was going on. And I don't know, like obviously it's not a good thing. And that's why, like I said, like you have that crisis point, and that is you either learn from it or you ignore it, and you relapse again and again and again and again and again. And it keeps going. And I'm not going to say like that's probably my one and only crisis, but I think it's the most substantial one that needed to happen at that time to really like, you know, either you learn from it or you're going to go back down again.
Yeah, totally.
And yeah, I mean, like, it's weird. It's funny how some people just don't look at it in that sort of way.
Yeah, I think it's very easy now, especially, I don't know if yourself would agree, but when you've been through something, a crisis or, you know, a real deep moment in one's life, it's very easy when you've learned from it to reflect on it and understand what you've taken.
I think it's the most important point.
100%. I think the thing that scares me is when I speak to people who have been through crisis and these moments but don't know that they have been, because for me, I found in those situations that those individuals are the ones that have still got to learn about themselves. And by no means do I know everything about me personally,
but I think it also like it's the way that we humans are as well. Like we naturally tend to bond more with people that are more like us. And I think personally I find people not necessarily that don't have the same opinion as me, but have different morals, for instance, than what I have. Like those are massive things for me, like values as well. Like I can't be around the same people if they don't have like I can't be around those people if they don't have like those same morals and values that I have. Like
Most
I'm not
definitely.
asking for someone else to be just as creative as I am,
No, of
but if
course.
they don't have like they don't have a mind that's as open, I really, really struggle to then look at them and be able to kind of, I guess in a way it is like being able to accept them, because then I'm just like, you could do more. Like here, like you kind of showing them the door, like go on, it's
look
great.
at this.
Go through this one.
Yeah, I totally agree, and that's the thing. I think the thing that I've kind of learned is you can't get people to do something, especially with regards to like mental health. Like that's a deep subject matter, but
it's sensitive. That's why
incredibly, and I think it's really great that it is much easier to speak about in a public forum now. Especially for young people. That's something that really inspires me, is seeing the younger generation being so open and liberal with being able to understand their emotions and communicate them, especially. Whereas my generation, our generation, and even the generation after that, like my sister, who's coming up to 30 now,
right.
And this isn't a reflection of her by any means, but I've found that they become that generation is naturally more secretive potentially, and they're
I think it's what
more
you're taught,
private.
though, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's the thing is, I'm going somewhere with this. It is nice to see that hopefully we're now over the other side of the hump of being able to speak about mental health in some capacity, and speak about it openly. For me personally, I've always spoke about it openly now anyways, and we're hopefully coming to the other side where it's much more accepted in some contexts.
I mean, I think it's easier to talk about it 100%. Like you've got so many different platforms now that you could use. Whether it gets accepted is another thing, because I think this is the thing with a lot of these changes that are happening now with, you take feminism or whatever. Things do get said, but they don't necessarily get accepted. And I think we're still behind on a lot of things in terms of that. I think it's not something that you can just have change in a day and suddenly everyone's okay with it. And I think this is where you say as well, like with the whole generational thing, you go up the line of ages and it becomes more and more secretive. So it's great that more people feel like they can talk about it, but at the same time you're still going to be met with the ones that like, oh, why are they making it all about themselves for stuff like that, like you. And I think at the same time you can talk about it, but you've also got more ways that people can get to you on a negative side as well.
Well,
like you can put it out, you get people
true.
dislike your YouTube video, or they'll leave a comment on your Instagram post or something that's like ridiculous and nasty. And I think that's the thing, like I've noticed, like, but with everything you get something good from it, and you're always going to get the bad from it as well.
The positives and the negatives are always going to show through in any context of sort of most conversations I found, whether it's around mental health, feminism, sexuality. There's always going to be those people that are going to be negative towards it and positive and disagree, etc. And I think it's really interesting. I don't know if you'd agree, being sort of I think I've always found, because of being sort of a documentary type photographer, a lot of my job is observing and understanding. As an artist, that's what I enjoy. And with that, there's a lot of learning that comes from it about new communities and support networks. And for example, I've completely forgot the name of it now. I'm going somewhere again. It's late in the afternoon, 5 o'clock. I'm thinking about going out. Anyways, I think the thing that I've learned is to be much more accepting of other people and their opinions and their perspectives on life, especially. I may disagree with them. Some people probably know who they are.
I agree with that. I think one thing as well, like with the whole social media, you always see Facebook arguments, for instance.
Oh my God.
And I think it's one of those things now that, like, one thing I've probably learnt more so this year is trying to keep it balanced, where like we were talking about the social dilemma, and it's also the whole cookies thing. Like it's the same thing with every time you react to a certain post, like it's gonna show you more of that.
Most definitely.
It's, you can easily get yourself down like a little narrow rabbit hole where you're only seeing something from one perspective, like one sort of view on politics or religion or whatever, if you only surround yourself with that. And I think I'm trying now in a way to actively search for someone that has a counter view on it as well. Like, I know I said I struggle to be around with people that have different views or morals or whatever, but it's more of like in my circle of spending the most time with.
Yeah, most definitely.
I think when it comes to just a more general, like I might meet that person once or twice in my lifetime, then it's a bit different and I can kind of deal with that opposing view. But it's also interesting because I think one thing that's really, really important nowadays, and especially with the generation that's coming up now, is the art of conversation. And you see all the time on arguments on Facebook or whatever, and there's just a lack of communication between the two, and that's why they just can't agree with each other. And especially when you get onto the personal insults, and it's like, well, that's
you've gone down the rabbit hole there.
But I think we need to be able to have conversations and be able to speak to someone that has a different viewpoint, but also not to feel threatened. I think it's getting a little too hostile and aggressive.
Yeah, I think I think you can see that there is like quite a, not to go into policy, but it's a good way of sort of framing this, I suppose. There's quite a political shift in the way people are thinking now. We've gone away from being somewhat moderate in thinking as a society.
Yeah.
Somewhat left, somewhat right, a little bit of both.
There's polarization.
Very much so. We've become very extremist in our views. We're becoming more extremist by the day, I would argue. You're becoming right wing or left wing, liberal, or
it's always really... a versus, though. It's always a black versus white, this versus that.
But I think that is to do with being able to, I hate to use, I think it's to do with the media. I think it's a way of framing it. It's, we think of like news stories, for example. It's this person versus this person. This person did something. It's not very open-ended. It's very closed off and boxed. So being able to put somebody versus somebody else
it's
or an
the
ideology.
Stereotypes. Like, I see it all the time, especially with media when they talk about students, for instance. And you see it all the time, like people commenting saying, oh, students think everything's owed to them and blah, blah, blah. And that they get a job automatically after. And I'm like, well, that was definitely not what I was thinking, let alone what I got anyway. It's awful to see people giving into this whole picture that's been painted. And sometimes I'm always like, but have you actually believed everything that the media says? Like, are they a little bit more, open, looking into other things? But I guess at the same time, like for me, I was that kind of student where I really did learn from researching, like, and I don't mean like, oh yeah, go research a link on whatever. When you hear from the conspiracy theorists, like, oh yeah, I did my research. It's like, you looked at one link probably, but it's like, I do check to see before I shared what was the date on the article. 2010. Well, why am I resharing that? Why is that relevant anymore? Unless it's something that actually backs up a point of, like, say, a study that was done back then, or whatever. But it's kind of scary to see what people will just share at an instant. And I'm like, did you look at it? Did you read it?
Yeah,
like,
totally.
What are you doing?
And I think it's scary to think that social media, I think with the lockdown and us being stuck at home now, especially in some contexts, and being stuck on these things, our phones,
it's
constantly.
Not great.
Yeah, I think people are starting, a lot of people, including myself in some contexts, are starting to use social media as real life.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I totally agree with that.
And I think that is the scariest thing out of this with regards to misinformation or sharing things.
It's so easy though. Like, I've had it where I've caught myself out where, I'm going to admit this, but I've shared stuff and then in a minute I've deleted it because then afterwards I'm like, wait. And then I found something else that is completely obliterated what I just shared. And I'm like, okay, should have thought about that. Or sometimes then I'm like, actually, no, because if I share this, it's going to get the wrong viewpoint and it's not putting something into words in the right way that I need it to say.
Yeah, of
I
course.
mean, like, I'm not afraid to share my opinion with stuff.
No.
You've probably seen it. I will share stuff, and if I don't agree with it, I don't agree with it. I'll post it up, whatever. But I don't want to be a part of sharing misinformation at the same time. Like, I feel like with the way that my mind works, I feel like I have a duty to do the right thing as well. Like, I'm always conscious of doing the right thing. And I think if you just continue sharing things without thinking about it, then you're kind of letting yourself down as a human, like an evolved human. Because I think I read a lot of psychology books and a lot of nonfiction. And the one thing that always amazes me is the things that they write about how us humans have developed, how our brains are so much like insane and they have the power to do this and that. And I'm just like, oh my God, we are incredible. But then you look at the rest of the world, you're like, what?
Yeah.
How does this correlate to what I'm reading right now? So I feel like I'm part of, oh my God, my head is growing now, isn't it? I feel like I'm a bit more advanced, I suppose, so that I have more of a responsibility to be more in tune with things.
Yeah, I think I think what you're saying is you're sort of trying to, you're trying to educate yourself in a way that makes you feel that you're capable of understanding the world that we're living in right now.
But also sharing as well. I think
and being
that's
able
the most
to put that
important
point
thing.
across in some context to whomever reads that. I think that's the thing is, I think we've become so reliant on these platforms, and even as creatives,
they're great.
Yeah,
they're great, but they're also the worst thing in the world.
They quit your head, but they also are amazing at exactly the same time.
I mean, like, I've connected with people and made friends just because I followed them on Instagram.
Yeah. And I think that's the paradox of social media and this digital world is the burden that it has on our minds. One, because what we were saying sort of before we started podcasting, this idea that we have to live beyond our means to impress whoever the fuck is looking at our social media.
Yeah.
And then there's also this feeling of connection and the good side of social media.
Massively. I think it's what you decide to look at it as. I think once you've decided that it's a bad thing, it will always look like a bad thing to you.
Totally. And I think I'm in that stage at the moment, trying to figure out where I lie personally in this and how I feel towards being on social media.
I mean, I limit myself, to be honest. I actually put on the screen time limiter, so it actually turns off any apps that I haven't deemed as necessary.
Interesting.
And then if you click on it, it will give you like, oh, give me 1 more minute or 15 or ignore for today.
Yeah.
And I find, I mean, don't get me wrong, like, my screen time hasn't drastically reduced, but it is making me more conscious. Like, when it comes up, like, I set it to 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And when it comes up, I'm like, oh, wow, okay, that went really, really quickly. And then I think to myself, am I actually enjoying it, or am I scrolling for the sake of scrolling now? Because it's so easy to get sucked in. Like, even when you know how it works.
You understand the code, like the way it pulls you together.
Yeah.
I think it's a natural human instinct of being interested in what's going on.
We're still quite primitive.
Massively primitive in so many ways, you know. And I think I found, for example, like, I know you vlog every now and then, your travel vlogs, which are great, by the way. But I found with like using Instagram stories as like a vlog platform, which I've done on and off for a while now, I found that not only did my audience grow, I hate to use that term because it makes it sound like I'm some fucking influencer, which I'm really not.
But there's a good side. There is a good side of it.
I think there's an audience in the context that can help you in some ways. I found.
I think it's just because at the same time you want to connect to the people that are like you as well.
Yeah, and people that have got similar interests.
You want to find like your tribe in a way.
Primitive.
This is why I'm referencing it, because I remember there's a book I read, and I say it to everyone to read, The Chimp Paradox, and that literally just changed my outlook on everything. And now every time I see something, I'm like, I see it. That's it. It's doing it again.
No, I totally agree.
And it is that, like, you know, I mean, how many of your friends are creative?
Good question. most of them, I'd
Exactly.
say.
So
Yeah,
you
most of
usually
them.
will surround yourself with
Yeah.
similar
Yeah,
minded
yeah.
people. And I think as well, like, because it's not something that you can physically do on social media, but you know that the accessibility is so much wider. You just want to be able to connect to people that are going to enjoy what you are doing, what
Yeah.
you enjoy, because what you're doing is something that you also want to see as well.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think that also ties into the acceptance kind of element of our brains.
Yeah.
So we want to be accepted by, you know, our tribe, the people that we see as our, you know, individuals that we want to become friends with, or whatever it might be. And I think that's the thing that I found with the Instagram story is going back to like this primitive nature of being sort of interested, especially in what other people are doing.
Yeah.
I found with the Instagram story that people became really interested in not my art or what I'm creating, but in the person that I am, which started to create this weird paradox that I found with filming myself every day.
No, I know.
Because I started to actually lose myself, and this is why I'm off of it for now.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to figure out.
I did notice. I was thinking about this the other day actually,
Yeah.
because I've always watched yours as well, and I was just like, I haven't been doing those ones for a while now.
Yeah.
But no, I totally get it, and I think as well. I don't know. Did you felt a lot of pressure though at the same time? Do you feel like
Massively.
you had to keep doing it because someone was gonna be like expecting it?
Yeah, in some ways. I felt a lot of pressure that I was putting on myself because I was taking time out of my day, out of time that could be productive.
Yeah.
To make this daily video, whatever it might be. And when I first started it, it was very much like, you know, when people first start a vlog and they
it's
film.
Fun, it's great.
100%. And you film everything.
Yeah.
Everything you do is, I'm making a cup of tea. Like, you know what I mean? And then obviously
it's like the first days of Instagram. You used to post pictures of your toast or whatever.
I think mine was like a cup of coffee, typical.
Mine was actually a camera. It was an old style camera.
At least one of us was on topic. But yeah, no, I think that's the thing is that it started off being this really interesting way of showing my artwork. And I don't know if I've ever really explained it. I know I have on social media, but the reason why I really started it was because of my bout with mental health and depression and coming out the other side of attempting suicide and feeling refocused, losing weight, feeling like a new human. Not healthy by any means, but feeling like a new human. So I wanted to document that. I think that's part of me being this documentary photographer. It ties into all of that. But I wanted to document it just in case it inspired somebody else or somebody else saw that and thought, I could, you know, maybe I need to pull myself out. I need to just, you know, make some decisions. And by no means do I think I'm an inspiration to anyone.
No, but the thing is like, I think you forget that you can have a really, really, really tiny audience, but there's one person in there that does see it as like, wow. Because I know sometimes I think this to myself and I'm always like, oh, others probably think that I'm trying to be so much more than what I am.
Yeah.
But I know, because I've had a message before from someone like, wow, thank you for doing what you're doing, because it really inspires me. And just that one person is enough to let me go.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree.
That's my alarm.
That's okay. It's all right. I'll podcast by myself. But no, I totally agree. I think that's the thing is, I found when I first started it, I was really interested in self-development, self-growth, and documentation, as I said, especially when I moved to Cheltenham and all these things. But in the last month, 2 months, I've found it's become a burden on my own mindset
document as well. To be
totally, I think here in the studio, like with the Brickworks, making a podcast, a weekly vlog, Instagram stories, being very public, which I don't mind being. You know, I've sort of tuned myself up to being in this position over years of doing the Instagram story. I'm very comfortable with filming myself in the middle of a crowded place. I think it's a skill though as well. Yeah, definitely. I think there's a level of confidence in it. By no means am I necessarily a super confident person.
No, but you can grow that for sure. Like,
totally.
I mean, bit different for me because I used to get up at school and sing at the assemblies in front of 300 people, which, you know, was bloody nerve-wracking to say the least. But I've always kind of had that performer in me, so being able to put myself out there is maybe more natural. But then when I did more videoing and I had to sit in front of a camera, I'm like, oh my God, this feels weird. This is so like scary and weird. And I can get up on the stage, no problem at all.
Interesting, because I find that really interesting how different people are able to adapt differently to sort of social pressure in a way. You know? For me, sitting down and filming myself, I'm not nervous about it anymore. I know what I'm doing and how I'm going to pronounce my words, etc. There's not always that level of thought that goes into it. But when I've done public speaking, on the other hand, I remember the first guest lecture I did. It was to like 12 people. It was a tiny little class, and holy shit, I was bricking.
It's a skill again. Like you watch TED Talks and you're like, wow, they're amazing.
Totally. And that's the thing, is like, now I've done a few of them. I've done like 10 or 12 guest lectures and all of these things.
Yeah.
I'm much more comfortable in that environment. By no means am I confident.
No.
Comfortable.
There's definitely a difference.
100%. And I think that's really interesting to hear for yourself, especially as you're sort of getting back into like the YouTube thing, starting, as you said, been making music again.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to hear that your confidence is different and mine is different. Like these different abilities, I think, is to sort of utilize the skills that we've got.
I think as well, it's like pushing yourself out there as well, like knowing, okay, this is scaring me to death, but I'm gonna do it. I mean, for me, I am. You won't believe it, but I am so conscious of what other people think of me and will say of me. And okay, so maybe sometimes it stopped me from doing things, but other times now I'm just like, do you know what? Sod it. I'm just gonna do it. I'm like, I don't care now. I've got to a point where, like, in my head now, I've actually built up enough confidence to just be like, I don't care. I'm gonna show this. And if people don't like it, they can go somewhere else. Essentially, like once I'm in that headspace, it's great. Like I love that side of me because I'm formidable. Like I could do anything and everything.
Totally.
But this is then not always the case, and sometimes I have my super self-conscious days where I'm like, I ain't doing anything, I'm not releasing anything, I'm too fragile, too vulnerable, like I don't want to. And the confidence is just like complete opposite to what I am when I'm in a better headspace. And I think it goes back to the whole mental health thing as well. It's like once you're in that state, it's really hard to just switch from it. Even though it's a switch, essentially. Like you can be really happy 1 minute and the next minute it's just like, oh my God, this is the worst day of my life.
It can literally just change in an instant sometimes.
But it's now one thing that I've really had to teach myself is to just be like, right, it's gonna pass, but I need to accept what it is right now.
Totally.
And especially when I'm in the middle of creating something. Again, this is why I haven't really released my music at all, because I've had the moments where I'm just like, I can't do it. Like I literally cannot bring myself to do it. And yet you ask me on my good day and it's something that I only ever want to do.
Yeah. And I think that's so interesting to hear that. And it's interesting to hear that because it's something that I've needed to hear, if that makes sense. Like personally, that's partly why I stopped the story and I'm taking a bit of a break from necessarily personally putting myself on Instagram, because I felt very vulnerable. I feel better today and yesterday, and we're building back up.
I think there's still like an image there of like when you show yourself as vulnerable, there's still the thought in your head that you're going to think someone else is thinking that I'm just being an attention seeker. Because it used to be the thing that people would say to you, like, oh, that girl's crying again. Oh, she's such an attention seeker.
Yeah.
That's all you used to hear at like school or whatever. And I think for us anyway, like it's still quite difficult sometimes to be like, no, this is, me right now. I'm bawling my eyes out. I look absolutely rubbish. My eyes are puffy and everything because I've been crying so hard. But it's part of the life. And I think
part of the process in a way.
I think it's like mental health is a lot to do with acceptance.
Totally.
Like massively learning to be able to be like, right, today is not the day. I need to accept that I can't change it right now.
No.
Tomorrow will be better, but right now, like, I need to accept the way that I'm feeling. And it doesn't mean that it's completely invalidated just because someone else is suffering more.
No, of course.
I think too many times you get people where they'll be like, oh yeah, but think of all the kids in Africa, blah blah blah,
yeah, that's
whatever.
like the go-to.
And it's just like, but yep, I'm hurting right now. Like,
Yeah.
and especially when someone's had the same experience, like you could have someone both witness someone in a car crash. Let's say you're just walking down the street and you see it happen, and then you have the person in the car. The person in the car that actually did it might not even be bothered, but the person that was walking down the street and saw it might be so wrecked,
distraught by it,
and distraught, and yet they weren't even really involved.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, is like you can't put one image next to another and expect it to be the same.
Of course.
And that's why I think this is why also some people don't understand mental health, because you just can't.
No, and it's different for each person. I think that's why we'll never necessarily systemically thank you very much, fix mental health. It's not a fixable thing, because it's an ever-evolving, ever-changing thing, because it's different in each person. And I think that's...
You have to find your own coping mechanisms.
Totally. And I think, we're all learning in different ways, different speeds, different processes, and I think that's the positive to take out of all of what's been going on in the world, especially in 2020.
Oh, it's been a heavy year.
Totally. And I would like to think that people have taken the time that they've been, I feel, gifted with this pandemic in some ways, to find self-growth, to find self-love, find these things to start to develop a new part of their mind, a new part of their persona.
I think as well, it's important to remember though that you make all this progress, but you are going to have the days where it's going to set you back.
Totally.
And the main thing to remember when you are in that moment is that it doesn't mean that all the progress that you've made is undone. It's totally, you can get up the next day and you can be back to that level again.
Totally.
I think I noticed I put massive pressure on myself, especially like as I was coming out of the crisis. Like I was trying to do it really quickly. I wanted to get out of there as soon as possible. So I was literally throwing myself in every possible thing, like reading, meditation, obviously like music therapy, and anything I could think of that is meant to help me.
Yeah.
And in a way it was good, because it did get me out a little bit quicker, but at the same time then when I had my relapses, and I don't mean relapses like the same level, but they were still enough to be like, oh my god, like why I've done all this and you're really gonna put me back in that little place again. And it took me a while to realize that it's not all gone. Like the person that I was then is definitely not the person that I am now.
Most definitely.
And the things that you do are life changes. They're not just, you're doing something that's only catching on the surface. Like they are something that will really change your behavior deep rooted. And that it means that as well, like when you do go through a relapse, you can get yourself up a little bit quicker than you did last time. But one thing, and it goes back to when I said about mental health is also about acceptance. I know that I'm not gonna ever not have a bad day.
No.
There's gonna be a time where I'm gonna be bawling my eyes out and I can't understand why. Like I had that, I was saying to you, I had that 2 days ago. I honestly was, it was like and I was just like, oh my god, no, can we not? Like I've been here before, please don't, like,
let's not do this again.
Get out. But I was just like, it's just the way it goes, I've got to learn how I'm going to cope with this, rather than thinking, oh, but this is going to fix me, and this is also another thing. It's like not to think of mental health as, oh yeah, but you're broken, like there's something wrong with you. It's very never anything of that.
Sort of go to that, I think.
And it's massively.
It goes back to this idea of putting people in boxes, and the idea of the versus it's all of, it's not to bring up the society thing, but like
kind of it. We're our own fault at the same time. Like it's easy to say, yeah, but it's society's fault. Who is society? It's us. It's you. It's me. It's our neighbor. Like we are society, and I think it's acceptance again. We got to remember that we're also sometimes going to be the ones doing the damage. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that I've never said a bad word about anyone before. Like, I'm not going to say I've never like joked about someone, because I have. Like,
Of course.
it's, I don't know why we do it. Like, we realize afterwards, wow, that was really mean. But you know, it's I don't know, it seems like it's normal behavior, but at the same time, like, you have to be conscious about it. Like, you have to be like, wow, no, don't say that. That's wrong. Like, don't say that right now. And then you're like, oh yeah, okay, no, I'm not going to be that. And I think we need to reconnect with that. Like, yes, the society, the government, but remember who is also in that little things. Bubble. It is us.
Of course. No, it's an interesting conversation, and I think we could talk about it for hours if we're not careful. But I would like to, before we end, I would like to sort of talk about your music. You were saying you've got like 1,000 songs and you've been making this whole time.
Yeah, I got like a little vault that I keep. To be fair, I am working on the song at the moment. It's probably gone its 300th draft, but it will eventually make its way, and I'm excited because it will be something a little, well, I say it's going to be a bit different. To me, it does sound a tiny bit different. Maybe it's still along the same sounds as what I create. Like, mine's more, I hate when people ask me what genre I am, because I don't really know.
Yeah, you
and I know my genres, but there's so many different elements. Like, I know, like, okay, the drums, I'm going to take more from a hip hop trap bass sort of thing. Then I really like film music, and especially stuff by Hans Zimmer, which a lot of the time is also quite atmospheric.
Yeah, I love film scores are incredible, especially Hans Zimmer's film scores.
Hans Zimmer's, and also there's one, Michael Giacomo or something like that. He usually does Pixar ones, but they're always beautiful. He did the Up ones, the soundtrack for Up, and I adore his stuff. But anyway, like, I've taken obviously sounds from that, and then naturally, like, whatever you grew up listening to, whatever maybe your parents listened to, it's kind of influenced that. So like, when people are like, oh, what genre are you? I'm like, I don't know. Like, you decide. You put the genre that I'm doing.
Interesting. Maybe that could be like a social experiment that you could do, is like make a series of songs and then actually ask people what genre they would put that in. I think that would be a really interesting sort of way of maybe exploring your craft without necessarily you putting yourself in the a really interesting way of exploring that. So you've, as we said, you've rebooted your YouTube channel. So what is next for Rhiane? What is the creative process? Because genuinely, I'm really interested, because this, as we said, the first time we've like sat down in person, had a chat in a long time. So I'm interested to see where you're going with like your creativity, because obviously you're so multifaceted of what I've noticed. You know, you're making YouTube videos, your photography as well, which we haven't even touched upon.
I know,
like music, all of these things. It must be actually.
This is my brain. Yeah, basically. This is, you know, I was saying about how the Aries things, like, this is also why I can't do routines, because my brain is literally like project. I'm not gonna lie, half those projects don't ever get finished.
Yeah, of course.
But I've kind of narrowed it down now to the ones that I want to try and keep, and I can't choose between any of them. So I'm just like, yep, I'm gonna run 4 projects next to each other all at the same time.
I know that feeling.
so yeah, like. I can't stop doing any of them. Like, I thought about it the other day. I was like, oh, maybe I should focus myself into one thing. And I'm like, no, it's not me.
No. And the last thing you want to do is limit yourself, because then you're not feeding the monsters that are the other crafts, you know. And it's something that I've learned, especially moving into the studio, is, although I'm a photographer by trade, this is my love, is my passion, but exploring other avenues, painting, street art, building. I didn't even realize how much I enjoyed building things, like a podcast area, and like making little things, you know, like I built a shelf yesterday for a plant. I loved it. Like, the whole process, like 2 hours of messing about. It was such a good process, and it was so much fun. But
I think it makes you more happier. I noticed my mental health dips massively if I'm not doing my projects.
Totally. And I think focus, I found for me, is if I don't have a focus that is outside of work, I don't even feel like I work. Well, that's a whole different conversation. Let's not go down there because that would add another hour. But that's the thing is like, I find if I can have something to focus on, whether it's a project, a series of images, whatever it might be, it changes the way that I'm living my life in that moment, and it gives me much more structure. In some ways, which is it's freedom for me. Having structure is a freedom of
Mine's
sorts.
actually like, it's actually feeding the fact that I can't focus on things for too long. So I have to have like different things that I can go to music, and then I can do something where I'm actually learning a language, which is completely different from making music. In a way. No, there could be some resemblances, but anyway, it's like something different. And then I can do the videos, and then I can do painting, because sometimes I do it. Like, I don't do it all the time, but I think it is like, for me, I don't have the focus to do something continuously all the time, unless it's something that I know I kind of have to do in more of a sense. Like, the only structure I have is actually when I'm doing my videos. Like, I do have all the videos that I want to do, all the notes on what I would kind of want to say. Otherwise, sometimes it might actually just be a straight up script that I want to like read, and then it will also have like, the usual schedule, like when I want to get it done by and stuff like that. So like, that's maybe the only time that has structure. Otherwise, everything else is very much like, it's like picking up a wand. Right, I'm gonna do this one today.
Yeah. That's so cool though, because like, I kind of wish my creative process was like that a little bit.
No, because it is a nightmare at the same time. Like, because I mean, I have a schedule with my YouTube, but the rest of it I don't. And then this is why. And it's also like, this is also what happens with not having a schedule. Like, I haven't released my music all the time. I don't do this all the time with my travel stuff. And I don't know, I think sometimes you do need that momentum to keep it rolling, especially with interest as well. Like, if you, I don't know if you find this, but like, if you don't post sometimes as often as you did, you start to have people drop off.
Yeah, massively. Because I go through stages where I'll take a month off from posting anything. Like, when I finished Treasure Island, which was like my big project last year, I started to upload it throughout the year. Had my exhibition in December where it was in Port Talbot, great show. And then I just stopped posting for a while. I was like, I was moving home. I was going back to Burnham. It was just trying to figure out what I was doing, and so I drips and drabs here and there. Like, I'd keep making the story, but with regards to actually posting, I didn't really do much of it, and it was like quite refreshing actually in a way. Taking that break, but then also that mental health thing starts kicking up. Like, oh, I've lost 10 followers. What's this all about? Like, what's going on?
I'm totally with you on that. It's so hard. Like, so many people say don't look at the numbers, but
it's so easy to do so. Like, it's there. It's literally there.
I think even if it's not there, like, I don't know about you. I'm going to talk about Instagram, but on my Instagram, I can't see how many likes there are. I know, because I've got a couple of accounts. I know on one of my other accounts, I can still see how many likes there are.
Is that because you disabled it or something?
No, because it is a feature that they were rolling out. So it is
interesting.
Well, it's basically because of the mental health effects of social media, especially in younger people, because they are so obsessed with numbers. I think they were trying to roll it out to see if maybe it's going to be a good thing. But I mean, like, it hasn't changed back. Like, it's still the same. So I don't know whether they're going to make it a whole feature. But it is weird. Like,
it sounds quite strange, especially, I think, not to go down that route, but I think social media is just an advertising platform now in some contexts, and likes and followers is what companies look for. I've got friends that, influencers in some ways, companies send them products to review and put on their social media pages.
I see it all the time like that. Totally. I've got a few like more on the fashion side, and I always see, they've written in the little corner ad.
Yeah, the little bracket ad.
It's going to be an ad, and like, I don't know, it's almost a bit like, you kind of sit through it and you're like, okay, great, and then you skip through it, and then it's an actual story, and you're like, yes.
Yeah, no, I think that's the thing with Instagram. That sounds really interesting, not being able to see the number of likes. I'd be very interested to do
I don't
like
think it's made a difference, to be fair. Like, I'm still
Do you not
conscious
think
of mine
so?
anyway, as well. But then also it's like, so it's different. Like, now it doesn't show the exact number, but it does say, like, for instance, Jacob liked this as well as thousands of others. So
Yeah.
that's what it says instead.
Interesting.
So you can still you still get an idea, like, this is millions, this is thousands, or this is hundreds. So you get an idea of like how much is there. And again, like, it's hard. Same with YouTube. Like, you can see subscribers, you can also switch it off, which I've seen some accounts do, but in a way it's almost like a status symbol as well.
Oh, totally on YouTube. You know, it's like, oh, I've got 1,000, I've got 100,000, I've got 1,000,000. You know, they even give out plaques for that shit. You know,
I mean, like, it's cool, but then at the same time, like, I see the negatives, but then I'm also like,
I kind of want a plaque. I
want a plaque on my wall.
Well, you know, for example, you know, I'm conscious of making these podcasts, different guests that I get on will get different viewer counts, you know, because they will bring their own audience to this platform.
Yeah.
So I'm conscious of those things because I'm building a podcast. So it's like,
it's only natural at the same time. Like, we're victim to it, but we kind of want it at the same time.
I totally agree. And I think that's the thing, is it's one of those things where it's like, all we can do is build understanding in our own minds of how it's making us react. Like, with regards to our own personal lives, you know, our Instagrams, our YouTubes, our social medias, and the way we conduct ourselves, especially how it's affecting our mental health and how we deal with that.
Yeah.
You know, if you're one of these,
you've got to maintain it.
Totally. And I feel not jealous, but I would like to be one of these individuals that doesn't necessarily get affected by it so drastically. You know, the likes that they have, the followers they have, but the thing that I also understand is I work in in an environment where those things sadly matter. You know, how many likes I have on a picture will dictate if somebody buys my zine. You know, if I have enough followers, I'll sell enough zines to buy a coffee that day. You know, and it's all those things.
It goes back to psychology though, of if other people like it, you're probably gonna like it too.
Totally.
For instance, as well, like, I remember this being part of our module in uni, and I think it was something. It was along the lines of basically like, when you listen to a song, which one are you going to listen to more? Are you going to listen to an advert on Facebook, or are you going to listen to a song that someone said is really good and you should check it out?
Well, a song that somebody told me was really good.
Exactly. So because someone else has said it, and not necessarily word of mouth, like, it could even be someone like reposting it on like a thing. It's already had that status that this is good.
Yeah.
So like, you naturally like, oh, okay, so if someone's saying it good, like, it must be good. So you click on it. You need that sort of social security in a way that it's good. It plays on the primitive state again.
Yeah, and it's almost a way of making. I've lost the word that I was going to use, but
I hate that. I get it all the time.
Like, oh shit. I think it's almost a way of making it feel like not acceptance, but anyways, I've lost the
I get
word.
what you're trying to say.
Yeah, the train of thought was there. But I think that's not far off 2 hours. That's a pretty long podcast that we've done. So where can people find your stuff? Where is it? YouTube, all of these things.
Just type in my name. I'm everywhere. No, in all fairness, type my name in Google, and I, like, most of my stuff, even the old stuff, comes up as well.
Really?
But, no, yeah, I've plagued Google. No.
Oh, you like a Google ad hoc, like, you know it really
actually,
well.
I do want to get into that though. Like, you know, if I can bump my stuff up even higher, that's good. No, to be fair, like, if you do type in my name, you can find most of my stuff. And then most of the time as well, I also put all my other links on that stuff. So like, you go onto a YouTube video, you'll find all my other stuff that I do as well, like, on there.
Fantastic.
If you go on my Instagram, all my other stuff is referenced on there. So it's like, you know, sending so many paper trails. Like, here you go.
I did actually notice the other day when I was on your Instagram, I was like, oh, actually, everything is linked here. So
nice, it
is nice and easy.
It was one of the things that someone recommended to me. Like, make yourself easy to find.
Have you seen like Linktree? I think it's like a Linktree thing where you can put a tab and you can click on it. And
I've used that. It's a landing page. We call it a landing page.
And I might try and mess around with that.
You normally do it with music. Like, you know, when you click on, I don't know, Dua Lipa is releasing a music thing.
Mm.
Click on the link, and it normally gives you like Amazon, Spotify, iTunes, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Same concept.
Yeah.
Because I know Gabs uses it, and some other people
I've
that
done
are
it
in the creative world
once
that use
before,
it.
I think, with one of my songs. I'll do it again as well, most likely.
Perfect. Well, to everyone that's watching and or listening, make sure you go check out Rhiane's work. It's all linked down below. I appreciate you coming on, having a chat.
No worries.
That was a deep conversation we just had. That
I'm
was
a bit
good,
of a
though.
waffler, so I do apologise.
Well, we're going to go talk about camera equipment now, Sony's, which this is filmed on, by the way. So, yeah, thank you for coming on.
No
and
worries.
I appreciate everybody who is watching this podcast and listening right now. So,
Thanks.
take care, guys. Be safe out there.